Now to Ukraine, where military forces say they shot down at least 15 drones during an early morning attack on the capital, Kyiv. City officials say critical infrastructure was hit, but didn't give details. Hours earlier, a video emerged of Russia's defense minister, Sergei Shoigu, purportedly inspecting Russian troops in Ukraine, though it's not clear where or when the footage was actually filmed. Its release comes ahead of Vladimir Putin's first visit to neighbouring Belarus for years. The Russian president is due in Minsk later for talks with Belarusian ruler Alexander Lukashenko. Well, our Moscow bureau chief, Yuri Reshetto, joined me from Riga, where our office has been since being forced out of Russia. He told me what's expected from today's meeting between the Russian and Belarusian leaders.
Well, Putin and Lukashenko are very dependent on each other, both politically and economically. But it's quite remarkable, Phil, that Putin is going to Minsk instead of Lukashenko to Moscow this time. In previous years, it was the other way around. Lukashenko came to Putin several times a year. We remember the mass protests in Belarus in 2020 when Lukashenko remained in power, obviously thanks to Putin. In economic terms, too, Putin repeatedly lent his ally Lukashenko a helping hand with new loans. And this time, however, the situation is likely to be different because Putin might ask Lukashenko for help. And that means for military help. Putin is running out of experienced soldiers. They are all on the front lines. And for this reason, mobilized men in Russia need new instructors who can give them basic military training. It may be that Belarusian military officers could play that role.
Right. Let's turn to this recent apparent visit of the Russian defense minister to Russian troops in Ukraine. Why has Sergei Shoigu gone there now?
Well, we don't know if Shoigu was really on the front lines. In the footage published, some of the shown fields are green, even though it's winter in Ukraine. This has caused much speculation online. But at the end of last week, you mentioned it, there was a remarkable visit by Putin to his most senior military commanders. During that visit, Putin said that he expected them to make proposals for the short and medium-term goals in the war. What Putin meant by that is unclear, but what is clear is that Shoigu's visit to the front lines, or obvious or alleged visit shortly thereafter, serves a propagandistic purpose. Shoigu is anxious to show that he is taking his role as a defense minister seriously and probably to improve the image of his ministry after many failures at the front.
Now, Yuri, Russian media are reporting that Vladimir Putin is to make an important announcement at a defence ministry meeting this week. What do you think we should expect, bearing in mind that he cancelled his annual press conference this year?
Absolutely. The fact that Putin cancelled his annual press conference for the first time in over 20 years clearly means that things are not going well for him. Presumably, there were and are too many uncomfortable questions for the Russian president to answer. First and foremost, the question about the objectives of the so-called special military operation in Ukraine, what is the war is called in Russia still. The question about the extremely unpopular mobilization and also the withdrawal from Kherson, which Putin hasn't commented on. That is why it's possible that Putin will take the opportunity to announce some kind of roadmap on how Russia will continue to pursue its obscure goals in Ukraine. But it could also be quite different. Putin apparently no longer wants to be seen as a war president in his own country, and he could start scoring political points now as a peace president with a positive domestic agenda, especially now just before the end of the year and the upcoming holidays in Russia.
Okay, thank you for that, Yuri. Yuri Reshetto in Riga. And now let's go to Ukraine, where we can join our correspondent Nick Connolly in Kyiv. Welcome, Nick. Let's start with this morning's drone attack on Kyiv. What can you tell us?
Well, lots of loud bangs in the skies above Kyiv around 4 or 5 in the morning local time. We think that was mostly anti-aircraft, anti-missile defence systems working there. This, by the standards of what we've seen in recent weeks, this wasn't particularly big, but I think just to get a sense of, people's lives here in Kyiv, this is just grinding people down. This is, 3 hours of air defences in the middle of the night before the working week starts. This is just the norm, and people here are having to decide whether or not to get up, whether to go to the cellars, whether to stay in bed or, pay attention to these alerts. So this is something that does get people exhausted and kind of constantly on edge. It seems that Ukraine's anti-drone, anti-missile systems have been fairly successful in knocking these, as we believe them to be, Iranian drones out of the sky. There's not a huge impact on electricity, on other systems here in Kyiv today, but it is a reminder that Russia still has its capacity and still has lots of these drones left. In terms of what they've achieved, well, there's also the suspicion that some of this is also about working out where Ukraine's defences are, sending in smaller parties of drones to then send in more missiles in the days to come. So there's expectation of more there. And there's also, just a part of this is about exhausting Ukraine's defenders, keeping them ready at all times and making them waste as many of their very expensive and limited missiles and munitions as possible with drones that are pretty cheap themselves.
And what of this important statement that Russian media say Vladimir Putin is due to make? What is Kyiv expecting there?
Well, lots of kind of suspicion, lots of rumour, lots of speculation. For now, nothing really no one answer really kind of making people more convinced or not rather than others. I think there's definitely a sense that Putin needs to come out and talk to Russians after all those cancellations, all those kind of occasions where he's kind of shied away from talking to ordinary Russians about what's going on here and why Russia's troops are doing so badly. But there is a sense from lots of also things that have kind of trickled down through different press articles that Russia's president is willing to countenance further and massive Russian losses. The Ukrainians claim about 100,000 Russian soldiers have lost their lives already in Ukraine, and there were numbers in the press recently that the Russian leadership says they're willing to basically accept a further 200,000, bring that up to 300,000. So basically that they're in for the long haul and they're not about to shy away now and kind of pull back given that things aren't going well. But there is definitely also a sense that Vladimir Putin is going to keep on escalating and keep on trying to browbeat, trying to intimidate Western countries with kind of the risks of escalation in the hope that eventually they kind of draw down on their support for Ukraine.
And he's expected in Minsk for talks with the Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko later. Is Kyiv preparing for a new Russian advance from Belarus?
Well, that's obviously the million-dollar question, and the border with Belarus is about 1,000 kilometres long. It's largely undefended in terms of kind of permanent structures, just fences and kind of minefields, but nothing much more than that. And obviously this runs all along Ukraine's northern border and, basically all the perimeter heading to Poland. So that's basically very, very difficult to defend, and it's already forced Ukraine to pull forces away from the east and the south that will be needed there to continue with Ukraine's advances there. But for now, it's still being seen as a bit of a bluff, as an attempt to try and distract Ukraine. But if Russian forces were to start attacking Ukraine again on the ground from Belarus, that would be a major issue. That's only 100 kilometres away from where I'm here in Kyiv, so that is a constant risk and one that's going to be followed very closely.
Thank you for that, Nick. Nick Connolly in Kyiv. Well, despite the dangers we've just heard about, Kyiv residents seem determined to try and live a normal life, including going to clubs and partying, as our reporter, Max Zander, found out.
There's no getting away from the fact that Kyiv is a city at war. But sometimes it's important to try.
But life here in the city continues. We're in the Podil neighborhood. Now, this may seem like your ordinary residential street, but don't let yourself be fooled. See this truck over here? This is a massive generator that is connected to an actual club right down that alley. A club that right now is filling up with people who want to live an ordinary life, be it just for a couple of hours. Let's have a look.
The 11 p.m. curfew means it's an early start. People have come to party at Hotel. This could be a grungy club almost anywhere in the world.
All right, thanks.
But it's not even 7 o'clock, and it's already pretty busy. The main floor is filling up. It is a rare opportunity to dance, even if it's chilly. Most here are keeping their coats on. To those who have come, this is more than just a night out.
I feel good. This is our life now. It's just that we are already tired of reacting to missiles falling on our city. People are already tired of the war, of this pain. Music and art keeps us going. I feel good. I thank God that I'm here. I'm in Kyiv and I can see and hear all this.
Знаходжуся в Києві і можу це все чути, бачити.
But then, so it seems this is apparently part of partying in Kyiv at the moment. Just seconds ago, there was a massive rave going on. Now there's a power cut. The big generator outside soon does its work, though. And we head downstairs, where there's a different vibe. Kryskara raps about the war and Ukrainian identity. Make love, but not to Muscovites. That's one of her lines. It's so loud, we have to talk outside.
I believe that music is a powerful force that can influence not only people's moods, but also their feelings during the war. That's why you should sing when it hurts. You need to speak. You need to shout, not be silent.
Я сам на рік, я служив, я це в самому початку був. Я розумію.
I served in the military for a year, so I understand how important it is for the people that there's music that inspires them to live on.
Just imagine days ago, these people were sheltering because the Russians were attacking Kyiv with rockets. And today, they say they need to go out, they need to feel happy, they need to celebrate a little bit, live a little bit. And to be honest, it feels good to see that.